Introduction. The Philippines has become of the one most popular peninsula countries. It is located in western Pacific Ocean off the coast of Southeast Asia. Its island is divided into three geographical regions, which is Luzon Group in the north and west, the Visayas Group in the center, and the Mindanao in the south. Nonetheless, the Philippines were not just immune to COVID-19 virus pandemic that started in 2019 and also originated in Wuhan, China at the time. The first cases in Philippines was discovered on 3 January 2020, involving 38 years old Chinese lady who was being treated at San Lazaro Hospital in Metro Manila. Moving on to fresh and current state COVID-19 in Philippines. Prior to advance of COVID-19 illness, the Philippines met major advance in severity of sector. Because of the COVID-19 disease pandemic, the Philippines has been rising economic and social political center. Economy. Prior COVID-19, economic success in Philippines is predicated on solid economic growth, a thriving labor market, and foreign contributions. Increased economy, a growing middle class, and a young population all contribute to this. Formerly known as Six Men of Asia, the Philippines economy experienced a period recovery from 2010 and 2016. Population development is really smooth, steady, and linear process. Current state, the Philippine economy, on the other hand, is declined following to COVID-19. The country has been forced under stringent community quarantine, limiting travel and business activity. While these efforts slow the development of COVID-19, they had a significant impact on family income, job, education, food security, and businesses. Socio-political, pre-COVID-19. Prior to COVID-19 epidemic, there were many challenges concerning humanity both in social and political aspect in the Philippines. This issue has had an indirect good or bad impact on transformation in Philippines. Current state, Philippines response to COVID-19 has been termed as one of the world's longest and most stringent lockdowns. Entire province and city were placed in lockdown, transportation was restricted and mass and also social distance was strictly enforced. Lockdown and social isolation, also quarantine, are unpopular. Moving on to the biggest issue faced on COVID-19 in Philippines. The first one is lack of education. COVID-19 has increased education concern in Philippines and brought additional impediments to the country's existing impediments. Fund for mobile loads, poor internet signal, students struggling to focus and learn online, and also parent lack of information about their children's education were fundamental causes of education challenges in Philippines during the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, rising rate of poverty. 3.9 million additional Filipinos were pushed into poverty in the first 6 months of last year, with economic officials blaming pandemic related to lockdown measures, job losses, reductions in household consumption, and forced company closure.
In reaction to the COVID-19 outbreak, the Philippines government has been pleased of its foresight in implementing closure in major cities and province as early as March 16. The city of Manila's response to the epidemic has been characterized by ineptitude and brutality throughout. Due to high efficiency, the Philippines is adopting an enhanced community quarantine (ECQ). Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has responded to the coronavirus outbreak with a military-style response. Since the closure began, he has promoted the impression that the problems are the fault of undisciplined people. Foreign countries such as Singapore, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Hong Kong were among the first to enact travel restrictions and emergency measures, while the Philippines lags behind. Duterte announced a travel ban just for tourists arriving from Wuhan, China, the first or so-called cause of the disease outbreak, on January 31st, a day after the first COVID-19 case was confirmed in the Philippines. In early February, Duterte attempted to calm anxieties by declaring there was nothing truly to be afraid of, despite the hysteria as Filipinos hurried for protective, medical, and sanitary equipment. Meanwhile, supply of products like face masks has been rapidly depleting. On the day the first case in the Philippines was confirmed, presidential spokesman Salvador Panelo reiterated that the administration will not be distributing masks to susceptible people because it did not have any on hand. However, just a few days earlier, government officials were pressing the Philippines' generosity in assisting China with a $1.4 million donation of masks that were transported to Wuhan. In many ways, the second year of the coronavirus epidemic in the Philippines was similar to the first. As two waves of COVID-19 decimated the country, lockdowns remained in the place for the most of the year, despite the fact that millions of Filipinos were vaccinated during the year. Experts criticize the immunization campaign slow progress. In the midst of it all, lawmakers look into possible irregularities in the Duterte administration's pandemic contracts totaling billions of pesos.
US is one of the biggest donors to Philippines during this COVID-19. In 2002 alone, US provided 204 million peso in health assistance and another 298 million peso on 7th May 2020 through USAID, US Agency International Development. US provided clinical training and technical support to the Republic of Philippines. They also donated 100 new ventilators that were 1 billion peso. In 2021, US donated PPE worth of 5.7 million peso to Philippines, and they also donated ICU bed 3 times to 3 different provisions. US is one of the biggest donors to COVID-19 vaccine global access. They donated 41% of the vaccine in the facility, and Philippines is the first country in Southeast Asia to receive donation through COVID. By 7 March 2022, US already donated 33.3 million vaccine to Philippines, which is equivalent to 1/5 of the Filipinos. China is the second country that donated the most to the Philippines, and on 2020, they sent 12 medical experts to be aid to the Republic's Philippines. And their embassy also donated 2,000 pack of friendship rice in order to regain friendship with the Philippines. And China is the first country to donate vaccine to the Philippines. These are some of the countries that lend assistance during the COVID-19 situations in the Philippines: Singapore, Republic of South Korea, Japan, Republic of China, Taiwan. Singapore sends a lot of donations during the early stage of the COVID-19 situations in Philippines. Meanwhile, South Korea sends their very own AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine to the Philippines. Japan sent medical staff, and Republic of China donated a lot of PPE to the Republic Philippines. Brunei Darussalam, the Sultanate, donated 20 test kits, and on 24th October, they donated 2,000 doses of AstraZeneca. French, on the other hand, reported donate 2 million euro to support Filipino frontline, and another COVAX donor. They also donated 35 million vaccines, and at the end of 2021, they donated another Pfizer vaccine to the Philippines. The United Emirates Arab donated 4 metric tons of PPE and 3 metric tons of medical supply, and they also donated 100,000 Sinopharm vaccine in August 11 of 2021. The government of Canada donated 1.1 million Canada dollars to the Philippines alongside with 120,000 N95 masks. They also donated 400,000 Canada dollars to the Sexual Health and Empowerment Philippines. And the last country that donated to the Philippines is Australia. Australia donated a total of 200 oxygen concentration to 27 different hospitals and healthcare in all over the Philippines. Until 21st October 2021, Australia has helped training 640 healthcare workers and 300 local communities of Filipinos about the importance of vaccines to help Philippines.
In my opinion, DOH should raise the COVID-19 alert system to remind people to prepare more facilities and resources, which include logistic and medical supplies to confirm the confirmed COVID cases. The reason is due to the cases may increase, so they should do because hospital and regarding medical center able to provide the service and medical to those COVID-19 patients or those suspected people. So in my suggestion, government can follow China to build more hospital or quarantine hall for those COVID-19 patients at the early stage of COVID-19 because the medical facilities is quite important. Once the hospital and quarantine hall are enough, those patients can get the medical service immediately and there is more bed to reserve for those patients. My recommendation is I recommend the country to taking the action has done by the other countries such as China, New Zealand, Singapore. The action which have taken by this country are good and effective. The country of New Zealand has made the decision to have a countrywide lockdown on alert of level 4 because they want to control the epidemic around and measure the isolation place and medical supplies enough to cover all the patients. Next, my opinion is the WHO of Philippines should take action like Malaysia by organized roadblock and patrol 24 hours by police and army. Besides, Malaysia also promotes to everyone to download an app named MySejahtera to scan the QR code in every place we visit to keep the history and trace the close contact with those people who have COVID-19. My suggestion is Philippines can also create an application like MySejahtera because it can be used to those people who is positive on COVID-19 to report themselves on MySejahtera, so it's easy to know who is their close contact. My recommend is with Philippines to follow Malaysia by closing all the entertainment activities and social gathering events because it's easier to involve with those close contacts. people. For example, Malaysia has closed up all the entertainment activities since the early stage of COVID-19 during the first time of lockdown until the cases has been dropped. I think that increase the media engagement and disseminate message is not enough. They should do share the awareness details and sending the booklet to every house, just like the action done by Malaysia government. And Malaysia really do it. Malaysia government also remind people in the country to register themselves to get the vaccine by radio announcement, TV announcement, some more on newspaper because they want people in Malaysia all under protected by vaccine. My suggestion to Philippines is take the action more serious as Singapore. For example, Singapore open for those elder citizens to get vaccine after the age of frontliners. Singapore can support for them to convince them to get the vaccine. I strongly recommend Philippines can encourage their citizens to receive their vaccination as soon as possible because people may get easy to fall with the virus because their immunity goes low, and they also may come up with other types of virus such as Delta, Omicron, and more. The elderly must get their vaccination as earlier because they can protect by the vaccine. Next, also my opinion is China, Malaysia, and others countries can control the numbers of COVID-19 cases by stretches the SOP such as not allow people to interstate and only able to stay at one area. For example, China has controlled their citizen movement such as they only allow people to go out to buy the grocery, and Malaysia government are not allow people to go far than 10 kilometers and cannot interstate also. They will set the roadblock at every exit. My suggestion is everyone, no matter you are the sibling or neighbor who want to celebrate festival or gathering together, you must do the self-test before you join others. Or you can organize the virtual activity because virtual is the best way for those to keep in safe and secret. My recommendation is Philippines can follow the other spiritual countries to take action such as New Zealand because New Zealand is the successful country on control the COVID cases because they have quick record with 0 cases in few months ago.